Welcome to Konoha Crush, a clandestine effort to exhaustively research and document events occurring in and around the village hidden in the leaves. I'm Ruby.
I'm Gwen.
Hey Gwen, how's it been this last week?
Pretty good. I played Elden Ring.
Yeah, you finally got that going?
Yeah, I finally got Elden Ring going.
Okay, I also played some Elden Ring.
Yeah, you've played a lot more than me, probably.
I don't know, how much Elden Ring have you played?
Like 5 hours.
Okay, I've played a lot more Elden Ring than you.
Yeah, I mean, I got Elden Ring going yesterday, and I'm a busy bitch.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. I guess there's not a ton to say when you're like 5 hours into it, and also we're not an Elden Ring podcast. At least this is an Elden Ring podcast.
Not yet, we're not.
This is the encroaching dread that seeks to consume us all. But I once again didn't watch any anime this week. That's my bad. That's on me. I've kind of given up on watching anime until next season starts. I've just accepted this loss.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not really keeping up with anything this season either. Except for my dress up darling, which I forgot about until just now. I am up to date with it. I just, I think that's basically the only thing.
It's the only show airing right now.
And I don't even like it that much.
Damn.
It's cute. Like, we talked about it in a previous episode,
okay.
But it's like...
It's not gonna stick with you.
Yeah, it's like... Ooh, this is exciting.
What's exciting?
I finished writing the first chapter of my comic this week.
Oh, yeah. So now you have to draw it.
Now I have to draw it. More about that later, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have that going, you have an obligation to say what it is and where you can find it on this podcast, so...
Yeah.
I'm not working on shit. I mean, I run a tabletop game. I play video games. But that's not you can't find that anywhere.
You can't read Ruby playing video games? So what's even the fucking point?
You can't read me playing video games unless I'm messaging you on Discord about me playing video games. And the listeners of this podcast largely don't experience that.
Okay, to be fair, at this point, the listeners of this podcast largely do experience that.
Shit. You're probably right, actually.
Hey, but we'll get there.
Maybe.
Oh, and hey, you know what? Ruby, fucking congrats. Big episode 10. Woo!
This is episode 10. We really, I mean, this is a small milestone, but it's a milestone. We did it. We've got
it's a real milestone.
I haven't done the math about exactly how many episodes this whole thing is going to be, and it's hard to say for sure right now. I don't know if our format changes. Maybe we start watching less Naruto per episode and trap ourselves in hell forever. That seems unlikely, but
yeah, I think I'd probably just stop doing the podcast instead of doing that.
I mean, right now, I'm feeling pretty good about watching 3 episodes of Naruto this week. I'm feeling pretty good about having watched 3 episodes of Naruto this last week.
Yeah.
We wanna get into it?
Oh yeah. Episode 30. The Sharingan Revived. Dragon Flame Jutsu. After a scolding from Sakura, Sasuke is determined to prove himself capable enough to face his brother and activates his Sharingan. Orochimaru gets a little too excited by the prospect, and they duke it out, with Sasuke holding his own against Orochimaru's speed. That small victory seems short-lived after Orochimaru gets the drop on him with the help of some kind of mud clone. But Sasuke pulls through with clever use of ninja tools and binds Orochimaru to a tree and follows through with a new technique, Dragon Flame Jutsu. This melts off part of Orochimaru's fake face, so it's serious time. He no-sells breaking out of the ninja wire Sasuke had him tied up with and paralyzes Sasuke and Sakura with the jutsu. Orochimaru compliments Sasuke's use of Sharingan, saying he might even surpass Itachi before burning his Heaven Scroll and introducing himself as Orochimaru. He plants a curse mark on Sasuke, promising to see him again before melting into the tree underfoot. Meanwhile, Anko is rushing through the woods, hoping to catch Orochimaru before he does anything too fucked up to children.
Alright. This is a big one. This is a big episode in the sense that this is Atsushi Wakabayashi's first episode as a story reporter, an episode director, and an animation director. There are 4 episodes throughout across both series of Naruto where he served all 3 of those roles, and basically every one of them is iconic. So Atsushi Wakabayashi got his start as an animator working at Tatsunoko. That's where he met Norio Matsumoto, which is a connection that is pretty significant for his work on Naruto, because Norio Matsumoto is on basically all of his episodes. So it sort of started to make a name for himself when he got recruited to work on Yu Yu Hakusho by Akiyuki Shinbo, who is a director who would later go on to be sort of the central figure of Studio Shaft. And then over time, Wakabayashi There's like an interview where he talks about how he wanted to move to like storyboarding and directing episodes because he found that like drawing from other people's storyboards was kind of limiting, and so sometimes, and like he felt he wanted to be able to like stretch out and like flex a little bit more. Yeah, but this episode of Naruto is like the third ever episode that Atsushi Wakabayashi acted as storyboarder on, and like the first episode where he was like both animation director, or like all three animation director, and storyboarder. So kind of like a part of a process of him like gradually coming into his own and like coming into those roles. And then on this episode, there are only 3 key animators. One of them is Atsushi Wakabayashi himself. One of them is Norio Matsumoto, who I mentioned a bit earlier. Norio Matsumoto is an animator that like I often find I have a sort of hard time like introducing. I don't have a super clear idea of like what exactly his history is. I feel like in like circles of people who pay attention to animation and like animators, Norio Matsumoto is the kind of guy who just kind of gets treated like he doesn't need an introduction, and as such I've never really read like a concise introduction for him, but like suffice it to say that he is like a remarkably impressive animator, and his work on like this very show basically serves as an inspiration for a whole generation of animators, some of them who will like go on to work on Naruto, and one of them who will like by the end of this podcast have become one of the series like central creative like voices.
Mm-hmm.
And then rounding out that list is Atsuko Inoue, who is like a little less flashy, but like very capable and like, you know, very doing a very good job of like rounding out this episode and like you know, bringing it all together. And I think the results are like very impressive. I think this episode looks fucking great.
This episode looks so fucking good. Like literally this episode and the one before it, fucking like no offense to whoever worked on the one before it, right? Like night and day.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
You know, and I'm, you know, like, not to say that they did a bad job necessarily. Like, I'm sure there's, like, you know, resource allocation reasons.
Yeah, I mean, there's always like, circumstances behind, like, everything. I mean, like, this episode gets to have Norio Matsumoto draw basically all of the action in the first part of it. And that's not something you can get for every episode of your show. Or even most episodes of your show. Because he's, like, a human man, and he can only do so much work.
It's good fucking work, though.
It's good fucking work. Like, let's not beat around the bush. It looks incredible. Like, I feel like so... I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I feel like so much of what, like, fighting in Naruto looks like starts in this episode.
Yeah, like, there's just so much where I'm, like, watching this, and I'm just, like... This whole segment, all 3 times that I watched this episode, like, mouth agape.
It's, like, kind of unbelievable. There's, like, so many cuts where you just kind of look at them and it's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, like, when fucking Orochimaru is, like, zooming around and there's, like, the delayed kickoff of dust trailing behind him, it's, oh.
I feel like it cuts to, like, the sort of, like, panning shot as he's rushing over those, like, branches in the foreground, as, like, Sasuke's, like, slowly turning around and trying to keep up with him. There's the, like, ridiculous cut where Sasuke's, like, swinging down on the wires around the tree that's, like, drawn and rotating on the cell, and it's, like, it's kind of insane to look at.
It's super insane to look at. Are you kidding me? And, like, we have definitely seen it already in the show before, but something that, like, I don't think we've really talked about a whole lot that I'd like to mention here is the, like, line character and the, like, coloring and the rendering of, like, the really, like, high action scenes in Naruto looks so good. Like, just how, like, loose and just, like, totally, like, flat block colors everything is. It's
yeah.
It's awesome.
It is always a very exciting thing when you hit play on an episode of a show and it's like, oh, this looks different. Oh, this looks like...
yeah.
This looks, like, different in a very confident way, right? Like...
Yeah.
It's just cool. Before we get into the actual, like, here's what's going on in the fight with Sasuke and Orochimaru, there's a thing I want to point out about that I think is, like, pretty interesting throughout this episode, which is that one of the, like, visual ideas this episode is playing with is, like, the way that, like, light sort of, like, filters down into the forest, and, like, the way it is constantly like leaning into that in, like, ways that aren't really, like, naturalistic but are very striking.
Yeah.
Like, you get I mean, like right here in this scene at the beginning with, like, Sasuke and Orochimaru, like you get a little bit of, like, light filtering down through the trees, and that's like, I mean, like that's pretty straightforward. But also when we cut to Anko, like going into the forest and, like, trying to find Orochimaru before anything bad happens, it's just, like, way darker. Like, it is just like, oh, the sun is going down, and, like, the forest is just casting all these deep shades of red, and, like, the fight between Sasuke and Orochimaru isn't like that, even though it's ostensibly happening at the same time until that fight ends, and then suddenly, like, tension is out of the moment and like everything just kind of collapses into like this really dramatic like reds and grays. Like the way the sun setting is like played is like this thing that is like both very imposing and also just kind of happens to match the mood of the scene is really fun.
This show looks so fucking good sometimes.
It looks so good sometimes. Yeah, I think it's really interesting is like how the actual like big fight that this episode is adapting isn't really that long. Like it is about like 4 pages of but mostly of like Sasuke doing the trick where he throws the shurikens and like wraps Orochimaru up in wires and does the dragon flame jutsu.
Yeah.
But they just like, I mean, it just gets like drawn out in this like very exciting to watch way, and like a very worthwhile, because again, I feel like when we see like these really like tight like hand to hand exchanges of blows, that is just kind of like that is what Naruto looks like being established, both because like this is a very fun and compelling way for a fight to look, and also because a lot of people are going to see this episode and then go work on Naruto and make more fights that look like that.
Which, like, you know, good call.
Yeah, good call. But like it's cool. It's like so characterful. Like I really like the there's a bit at the start of the fighting where like Sasuke and Orochimaru are going hand to hand, and Sasuke is just like he's like jumping all over the place. He's like ducking and weaving, and like he's like trying so hard, and Orochimaru is just not is just not needing to move nearly as much like Sasuke. He needs to work so hard to keep up with him.
Can we talk about Sasuke's like fighting style real quick?
Yeah, what do you have to say about it?
I don't think Sasuke knows how to throw a normal punch.
That's fine. He knows how to do like a flip kick.
He's always so weird and bendy.
Yeah, it's good. Like there's a specific moment in that first like really tight exchange of blows where it's like Sasuke like tries to throw like a hit at like a punch at Orochimaru or like a kick. I don't remember exactly what, and he's like leans back with this cool like smear frame where like all of the line work around Orochimaru just goes away.
Yes.
And then like Orochimaru like retaliates with like just this kick that Sasuke has to like retreat all the way across the screen to dodge. And it just it like very clearly communicates the gap in like how strong these people are, because like it just really constantly feels like Sasuke has to be putting in so much to keep up with this person who is not trying nearly as hard.
No, and it's like Sasuke is also like ostensibly like a competent like fighter or whatever, but like even if he wasn't, this fight would almost look the same.
Yeah.
Just because like you can tell that like so much of what Orochimaru is doing, what Sasuke is doing, is just like Orochimaru is humoring this child right now.
He's like, all right, let's see what this kid's got. Okay, sure.
Yeah, just when he like walks out of the wire trap and it's just like completely just like, yeah, that was a nice trick, so I let you think you got me. Like I was playing along. It's just like it was a little bit chilling. Yeah, no,
if this is the guy who's going to be like, you know, ostensibly the main villain of the show for a while, this is a great way to like sell him. It's really successfully putting him over, I think, because he is just an intimidating presence here.
This episode's so fucking good, Ruby.
It's so good. A few other things I want to talk about in this fight is that the thing I find really impressive is that I think Norio Matsumoto has this great grasp of what sort of like shortcuts you can take to imply motion. Like there's this one cut where Sasuke is leaping through the air and spinning around and throwing kunai, and the first 2 times he throws, like if you're like frame stepping through the sequence, you can just kind of see that like there's like a little like flicker of movement, and then the kunai disappears from his hand, and then it's only like on the last throw that like you get the big full like wind up and like just hucking it at Orochimaru motion. And like by having, you know, those 2 like really like brief moments that like lead so quickly into like the big moment that like reads clearly as throwing, I think it just implies that motion like really well while being a very like compact sequence. Another thing I want to say is that I feel like a lot of the ways that this fight plays out, a lot of like the like techniques that are completely original to the anime, just sort of like feel very clearly like, oh yeah, this is a thing this character does. Like Orochimaru doing his mud clone thing, I was certain that was a thing that came up like later in the manga that they just sort of like backfilled here to like make as part of this fight, but it is a thing that completely originates from this episode. And it's just like, but like it feels so like, oh yeah, this is like a cool scary thing that Orochimaru does. You think you hit him and he just like melts and then he's somewhere else.
Which is like, you know, standard fare as far as like the things you learn that ninjas can do in Naruto, right?
Yeah, but it is like a very visually striking execution of that.
Definitely.
Like, I think is really interesting about the way that this episode sets the blueprint for what two people fighting in Naruto looks like is that like it is as much an Atsushi Wakabayashi thing as it is a Naruto thing. Like if you look back at what Wakabayashi was doing just a few months before this, he was like a director and storyboarder on episode 7 of Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. There's a lot of the same like you can see what feels kind of like early versions of a lot of what the fighting looked like in this episode, and the intent is pretty different there. But like there's a through line you can draw, and I think it's like I think it's cool to see something that's like, oh, this is like something that this one artist is bringing to the table that is weaving itself seamlessly into the broader tapestry of what Naruto is, and it's something that has like roots in that guy's work outside of just Naruto. Yeah, I think I'm pretty good on that episode. Like there are lots of individually sick looking at like bits of animation that I don't think we specifically touched on, but if we were doing that, we'd be here a while. So you should just watch this episode if you didn't. Like, you know, if you're just listening along and you're not watching every episode of Naruto, like sometimes there's going to be episodes that just look really good, and you should check them out. This is definitely one of them.
Definitely one of them. This is definitely one of the like episodes, one of the sequences that I look at it and I go like, damn, I want to be an animator. I don't want to be an animator.
You don't. But that got so many people. Like that is exactly like there are like whole movements of animators in Japan that like had that exact thing happen when they saw this air on television, and that's like incredible.
I know. Like I've tried animation. I've done short animations. I don't want to be an animator. I look at this episode and I'm like, oh my god, I want to be an animator so bad. Okay, let's move on before I decide to be an animator.
Okay, yeah, you've already got enough on your plate.
That confrontation leaves Sakura alone with a knocked-out Naruto and Sasuke. Anko tracks down Orochimaru, who's kind of just hanging half-melted into a tree. Anyway, Anko reveals herself to be a former protege of Orochimaru and intends to kill him. Anko gets tongue-grabbed, but she conjures sleeve snakes to yank Orochimaru out of the tree and pins both of their hands to the tree with a kunai, intending to use a special jutsu to ensure Orochimaru's death at the cost of her own life. But it turns out to be a mud clone. Anko lashes out but collapses from pain, from the same curse mark that Orochimaru put on Sasuke. Anko says Sasuke will die, but Orochimaru gives him better odds than that, and accuses Anko of being jealous, before warning her not to get in his way and vanishing into a wisp of purple flame. Rock Lee and his team decide to fan out and look for scrolls while Sakura cares for an unconscious Naruto and an even worse-off Sasuke. Outside the forest, Anko is nursing her wounds when she's approached by some tigers and a couple of Anbu Black Ops guys. She has them take her to the tower and contact the Hokage as the Sound Ninja Jobbers find Sakura's camp.
Yeah, so we are moving on to the second half of this episode, the much more Anko-focused half of this episode. I'm sort of like being put in a position where I need to really like consider what it is I find so compelling about Anko, and like how much of that is like, oh, this is like a cool and interesting character, and how much of that is me willing to be doing a lot of work on the show's behalf. Because I think she's really cool here in a lot of ways. I think it's very sick when she does her like big snake grab and she just like hurls Orochimaru into a tree.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I don't have to do anything for the show on that count. But it's like I guess I find Anko really interesting in the fact that we start to get this picture of her here as somebody who is like technically very successful by the standards of the village. She's a Jonin. She's
the proctor for the fucking tuning exams, right? Like,
yeah, right. Like she and like at a pretty young age too, right? Like comparatively.
Yeah.
And she's also somebody who's just like she just is fucking miserable. It seems like.
Yeah.
Like she is very much at that position of like, okay, if there's a problem I can solve by dying, okay, got it. I'm gonna die because I don't really want to keep doing this. It almost seems like, and that's. I think it's very compelling to have a character who is like kind of made it as a ninja to an extent, and is sort of floundering in the absence of any real belief in what being a ninja is supposed to stand for, because she's had this like personal betrayal at the hands of her old teacher, and she doesn't really have like a sort of personal connection to ground her to the village in that way. And I think that's really interesting. I think there's a lot that's really resonant there, but also, I mean, how much of this is like, oh, this is the character who is kind of consigned to being like sad and suffering a little bit because she's the girl in Naruto.
Yeah.
Like I think ultimately I'm content to like to to like take what I can out of this and like run with it, even if I know that like it's not necessarily coming from like the same place that I'm taking it. I don't know. Like it is kind of hard to ignore that Naruto is a show that does not really give much consideration to the women in it. And so when I am finding something that resonates on that level, I really have to. I really find myself kind of just second guessing a little bit.
Yeah,
but I do think the scene with Anko is cool. I think there's like another scene that we're going to get to like in a later episode that I'm interested to see how that expands out on this. And I think is fun about the scene. Like I talked about earlier in the first half of this episode about the sort of unnatural ways that this plays with lighting, and in this episode we get some more of that. Where like Orochimaru starts talking to Anko and the moon immediately starts shining directly down on them like a spotlight.
It's so good.
It's really good. It's just...
The show's fucking beautiful.
It's like this whole like conversation between Anko and Orochimaru is like really, really dramatically framed in a way that it's not really in the manga. I think this is like... I mean, this isn't the easy, obvious standout scene of the episode because, I mean... This isn't the one that Norio Matsumoto drew large chunks of. But like Atsushi Wakabayashi did a lot of good work on this part of the episode. I mean, both as a storyboarder and like a key animator. And again, I think there's a lot of like... There's a lot of little like flourishes that go to like make this scene more dramatic. There's like the shot where... There's that one shot where it's like, oh yeah, we get... We see Anko and Orochimaru in the reflection of the kunai that like Anko threw at Orochimaru, and that he just like grabbed and dropped into the stump of into the branch of the tree, and it's just all these little things like that. And it's also a lot of the scene being like there's just a much larger sense of like physicality to the scene. There's a lot less of characters like talking to each other from opposite ends of a branch, and a lot more of people just kind of getting up in each other's face in a way that I think really enhances the mood of it. There's another thing I was kind of curious about. There's a few other things I want to talk about with Orochimaru here because like there is a bit where Anko's like, "Hey, are you here to assassinate the Hokage?" And Orochimaru's like, "Yeah, I don't have enough guys for that." But later he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to destroy the village if you don't do what I want." So in Orochimaru's mind, is destroying the village easier than killing the Hokage?
Yeah, objectively, it's just building some stuff.
Yeah, okay, you got me there. I guess I don't have anything to say to that. And the other thing is we get Orochimaru starting to talk about like looking for like an heir in Sasuke Uchiha or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something that is like pretty vague in what that means right now. But we do get I mean we do kind of get like the vague implications of like Orochimaru talks about Sasuke's beautiful features and like. We get the there is definitely an extent to which this show portrays Orochimaru as like a sexual threat, right? And not in like a literal sense. Like I don't think the dramatic stakes of this show are ever like Orochimaru pursuing somebody in that way. But you know, it is like a part of him that is like we're supposed to find off-putting in the same way that like Orochimaru's like willingness to like defy like gendered boundaries and willingness to be a weird snake guy are like supposed to be scary things, and it's not great. It's pretty gross.
He's just a queer-coded villain. Like
yeah,
like there's no reason like not to just say it, right? And it's like it is a little bit toned down in the dub. But it's, you know, still there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they could get rid of it entirely, even if they wanted to. I mean, fucking look at him.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be kind of a bummer, especially like while we're in the part of this. Like we haven't reached the peak of that, but I think we're gonna be in the part of the show where that's like a big aspect of Orochimaru, and I think it kind of gradually diminishes. And like I don't know, it's weird because I do like Orochimaru as a villain, largely speaking. I think he's fun to have on screen, but it is just like we do have to at least acknowledge that there's an element of like, okay, yeah, there's like no two ways about it. There's like some pretty gross queer coding going on here.
Yeah.
The last thing that I have to say about this episode anyway is throughout this episode we kind of get like the start of what I guess is the biggest through line through these 3 episodes we've watched this week, which is like stuff with Sakura, like Sakura kind of being the last member of Team 7 standing, and like we're getting the foundations of like then they're building to like this thing of like, oh, Sakura needs to take a stand for herself, and she needs to be willing to like fight too or whatever. And like this was when I was watching these episodes again this past week, it was definitely a thing that like, I mean, it became pretty unignorable that they were very directly building to something with that, and I started to get curious because I didn't remember anything coming of that. And it was like this weird point of suspense throughout these 3 episodes of like, okay, what is Sakura actually going to do? Because
they almost got me. Like we'll get there. Like we'll talk about it a little bit later, but like they almost got me. I was like,
yeah, right. Like they're really setting it up to an extent.
I almost believed it for like a whole episode and a half.
And okay, I actually do have one more thing to say, which is that I think a pretty fun thing that we also see throughout these 3 episodes, that because Naruto is unconscious, we have different characters doing the like episode titles and episode previews.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's like this episode we have Sasuke, and then like next episode we got Rock Lee. You want to get into next episode?
Yeah, let's get into next episode. Episode 31, Bushy Brow's Pledge, Undying Love and Protection. Sakura nods off and dreams of Naruto and Sasuke waking up and being alright, only to be confronted by Orochimaru again. The shock jolts her awake, and she's startled by a squirrel approaching from the bushes. She fends it off so it doesn't trigger any of her traps, not noticing the paper bomb the sound ninja stuck to its back. Elsewhere, Rock Lee's making dumb little challenges to himself for Sakura's love, and notices the squirrel struggling against a paper bomb ready to go off. He saves the squirrel, failing his leaf-catching promise in the process. Team 10 has a run with Neji and try to flatter him out of kicking their asses, but he doesn't seem all that interested in either prospect, and opts to just leave them alone.
So yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about the staff for this episode in comparison to the last one, although there is like one bit of trivia I kind of want to highlight, which is that this episode sees another person who will like in the future be a pretty prominent figure at Ufotable, like just be like a regular animator on Naruto. This time it is Tomonori Sudo, who will go on to be the character designer and for like pretty much all of Ufotable's Type Moon adaptations, and like the director of some of them. And I guess I like before like this watch, I didn't realize there was any sort of I guess I'm a little curious to look into if there's like any sort of like line between like Pierrot and Ufotable that like led to that. But
I feel so bad about Sakura's dream.
Yeah?
Yeah, like this episode and the one after it really had me rooting for her. Like, not that I wasn't rooting for her before, right?
But it feels like they're building the scaffolding for something so directly, right? Like,
yeah.
Like at the start of this arc, when Sasuke tells her that she's like even weaker than Naruto, it's like, oh, okay, she's just getting the girl inferiority arc, and that's just where she's gonna be. But like starting here, we just start to get that like hammered in like so directly. Like so repeatedly, like, oh, like this episode starts with a nightmare that she is having that is like, oh, she feels unable to help and unable to do anything. And I feel like over the course of like this episode, the next episode, more people tell Sakura that she's like, that she's not shit than people have told are like underdog protagonist.
God, this could have been something so good.
Not to get too ahead of ourselves, because we have that episode. We'll be talking about that episode next, but we still got more to talk about here. We got Rock Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Got Rock Lee doing his little challenges. This is like this is a moment where it's like I don't know that I'm really bought into the Rock Lee wanting Sakura to like him angle, but I do think it's pretty cute that he's just like, all right, if I do this challenge that I'm setting for myself, then like a thing I want will happen, because I was like that kid also. Like I extremely did that as a child, although in my case it was much more, well, if I do all of these things, then God will turn me into a girl. And so, you know, I just see myself in the kid a little bit.
Yeah, it's cute.
It's an endearing little scene. And then he goes and he helps an animal, so you know that you gotta root for this guy. He's a great kid.
Yeah, now Sakura will never love him.
Sakura will never love him, but at least that squirrel's not exploded, and that's more important.
Yeah, that's more important.
And then we get the scene with Team 10, and this was like when I think about this trio of characters, I think so much more about like where they're at later, and like where specifically I guess Shikamaru is at later. because he's kind of the one of these three who like goes on to be like a character the most.
Yeah.
But like I think about like, oh, there's like one really like serious arc about these characters in Shippuden, and there's like a bunch of like little fights that Shikamaru gets throughout the show, and so like
yeah, and like even the other two, like they have shit going on, like they're like, you know, Choji gets like really strong.
Yeah, and so it was like sort of surprising to see them here, and it's like, oh, these are like. They're like the comic relief guys. They're just the guys who are like wandering through the forest and they're like getting into trouble and they're like doing silly shit. Like they're not like these are just the guys you cut to like lay off the dramatic tension a bit, which was just kind of I was kind of surprised by.
Yeah, like this version of these characters like didn't exist in my head at all.
Yeah, for sure. Like it had been so like thoroughly supplanted by the later versions of them. That those later versions of them just clearly don't exist right now. Like even in the sense of like, oh, that's not like a trajectory that these guys are on. These are just the kind of goofy guys where you got, you know, who's like the arrogant one, Shikamaru's the lazy one, and you know, well, we all know the joke with Choji. Then the Neji shows up, and this scene with Neji is really funny to me, mostly in the sense that everybody is like really shocked that he like seems to be able to see them without looking at them. Right, like everybody in the village knows what the Sharingan does to some extent. Like everybody's like, "Oh, the Sharingan! That's the super badass ninja eye." Everybody knows about that. Yeah. And like, meanwhile, the other big ninja clan with their big ninja eye, like nobody's really even got that on their radar. Even though they have like a classmate, they had like a classmate at the academy who was from the Hyuga clan. I'm just imagining like the Hyugas having this huge chip on their shoulder about that.
No. Hear me out. Hear me out. The reason everybody knows what the Sharingan is because the Uchiha were wiped out.
Okay.
Because there's still fucking all kinds of Hyuga everywhere. It's a secret.
They've kept that on the down low.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that makes a little more sense, but is less funny than Neji being like kind of pissed off that nobody knows what his cool eyes do.
True. The Sun Ninja confront an exhausted Sakura wanting to fight Sasuke. Sakura asks him what's going on and name drops Orochimaru. Sakura wants a fight, but Dosu points out an obvious trap. They leap over it and blast through the log trap Sakura set up just for that occasion, only to be swatted out of the air by an incoming Rock Lee. Sakura asks why, since they're enemies in the exam, but Rock Lee reminds her of his vow to always protect her. Dosu rushes them, but Rock Lee yanks up a big tree root to block the attack. Saying he knows something's up with Dosu's attacks, Team 10 spot the fight, and Neji and Tenten wonder where Lee went off to after he missed their meetup. We get some background about the technique Rock Lee isn't supposed to use, and learn that he's only allowed to break it out when he's protecting someone precious to him. Rock Lee drives Dosu into the ground with his primary Lotus technique, but Dosu survives after Zaku softens the ground. Tired from his forbidden technique, Rock Lee takes a hit from Dosu that makes him unable to stand.
Okay. Yeah, so we get into the second half of this episode, and immediately people are being fucking shitty to Sakura again. Like, instantly. Dosu's like, your traps are fucking bullshit. Anybody can see through this. There's this one shot in the anime that kind of stands out to me, because he's, like, standing over this, like, uniform patch of, like, background painting grass, and he's like, this grass doesn't grow around here, does it? And it's like, you really could have fooled me, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all the grass I've ever seen in Naruto just looks just like that.
You know, he sees through both levels of Sakura's trap, and he like puts her down some more because everybody's got to be doing that to Sakura right now, except Rock Lee.
But like even kind of Rock Lee a little bit.
Even kind of Rock Lee, because he's like, you need me to protect you.
Yeah.
He's just less mean about it. Like he's definitely like feeling like into her whole inferiority complex, I guess, even on it inadvertently. But
yeah, I mean, like. Just because he's not actively trying to murder her doesn't make it nice.
I mean, like, I think it's nice to try and stop her from being murdered objectively.
Right.
It's just,
Right, but also being like, you know, I swore I'd always protect you.
Uh-huh.
You know, that's just not something you drop on someone without, like, you know, knowing how they feel about things.
Yeah, you can't be making those vows, like, left and right. Like, Rock Lee shows up, right? he's really being a cool guy. He's got the squirrel on his shoulder still because he has befriended the animal that he saved. He calls himself the beautiful blue beast.
Why?
I don't know. There's this really strange implication here where he's like kind of going like, yes, guy, I did it. Where it makes me wonder if like, are these like pickup techniques that Guy has passed on? And that idea is absurd to me because I can't. The idea that Guy has ever thought about a woman is absurd to me. I just don't think there's any proof that's ever happened.
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I just checked the old memory banks. Dude never talks to a woman.
Never.
Never. He's never even met one. Oh, that's probably not true.
I mean, he's met 1010, probably.
Yeah. He just fucking ignores 1010.
I mean, Masashi Kishimoto does, so... The other thing that really caught me off guard about Rock Lee's arrival here is the scene where he just reaches his hand to the ground and pulls out a big tree root. Which is like, it's just very extreme. Like, I always think of Rock Lee as the fast guy, and not the guy with like ridiculous superhuman strength, but I guess he's also that because he can do this shit.
You need like a truck to do that. You can't just do that.
He does it in seconds. It's nothing to him.
He just yanks it on out of the ground. It's like...
He does that and he's still using 20% of his muscles.
It's like the size of a fucking car. It's huge.
It is so much bigger than him. Yeah, we cut to Team 10, like, seeing this happen, and Ino's worried about Ino's like, nothing bad can happen to Sasuke, and I like that Shikamaru is kind of like, I'm pretty sure Sasuke just kind of sucks. I don't know.
I love how that little like argument is punctuated by Choji being like, hey, Sakura's fighting someone. Sasuke's knocked out.
Yeah. Like, I think it's very funny for Shikamaru to be a guy who's just like, yeah, I don't buy that Sasuke's cool. He's probably not anything special. If he was so special, why is he in this fucking class with me? Loser. We also get Neji being like, yeah, don't worry, Rock Lee's probably fine, because I guess they're kind of bros. I always like sort of remembered that things being a little more antagonistic between them, but like, I mean, I guess Neji kind of thinks that Rock Lee is worse than him, but he also thinks he's like fine. So
yeah, I mean, like, Neji's like, Rock Lee's working really hard to keep up with me, so he's probably fine.
Like, he's not as good as me, because that's just how things work. This is my, like, beliefs as, like, a 13-year-old. But,
yeah.
You know, I do gotta hand it to him.
God, speaking of handing it to him,
fucking,
what a bad bunch of guys for Rock Lee to fucking swoop in and try to fight.
It is a bad matchup. It is not, like, it does not go well for him. Like, you don't want to fight the guy who can make dirt soft. Like, it is. You wouldn't think it would matter to the punches and kicks guy, but...
Yeah, it turns out hitting people with hard dirt is, like, Rock Lee's #1 move.
Yeah,
You know, and just the fucking, like... We'll get the specifics of it in a sec, but, like, Dosu's thing just, like, immediately puts him on the back foot in a way that, like, Rock Lee just can't stand up to.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like, a very extreme for Rock Lee, because Rock Lee needs to be, like, standing up and moving around and shit.
Yeah.
Also, like, we get the reveal of, like, here's the commitment Rock Lee makes to only use the primary lotus when it is, you know, to protect somebody important, which I think makes it much, like... You know, we get this display of him being very committed to it, but I think it makes it pretty funny that he was just, like, immediately ready to just bust it out to, like, show off, like, earlier.
I feel like he got that lecture after the fight with Sasuke.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or, like a rehash of that lecture, not the one we actually saw in the flashback or whatever.
Uh-huh. Not the one where he requests that Mike Guy explain it to him using hip words.
Yeah, I feel like he got a lecture about it, and so he was just like, alright, time to look for Sakura. If she's in danger, I'm gonna break that shit out.
Like, it is basically only by coincidence that the second time he tries to do it on screen, it, like, matches with the requirements he's been given to use it.
He's been looking for an excuse.
He's like a teen. He wants to show off his strongest attack.
Yeah. To the girl he likes.
If I had a super strong attack when I was a teen, you fucking know, I would be like... I don't know what my strong attack would have been when I was a teen, so I didn't have a follow through. But
well, if I had a super strong attack now, you know I'd be showing girls.
Oh yeah, but, you know, I guess that's true. I would too. I can't pretend I'm blameless in this. So really, we're all kind of like Rock Lee right now in this moment.
You think I'm so cool? Episode 32, Sakura Blossoms. Dosu's sound attack blew out Rock Lee's eardrum and messed with his sense of balance. Sakura uses this as an opportunity to show off his gross air pressure hands that he used to puff out the dirt to save Dosu. Dosu rushes Sakura, but Lee fights through his wobbly legs to intercept, taking another hit in the process. Team 10 watch on, struggling to decide on whether to move in and help or not, as Ino remembers how close she and Sakura used to be as kids. Sakura sends a volley of shuriken at Dosu, but Zaku sends them back with air pressure, leaving Keen an opportunity to grab her by the hair. Her inability to do anything brings her to tears, as Zaku moves in to kill the unconscious Sasuke right in front of her. Can I just say I don't like the title of this episode?
Yeah?
Sakura Blossoms is a little bit yucky. Like, I get it because it's like a play on, like, you know, Sakura is like the flower or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it's kind of yucky to talk about a girl like that.
It's not great. Before we get into girls, before this episode can really get into girls, we get a lot of like Dosu and Zaku explaining their like cool tricks. Like they get really in depth on it.
They're both like, hey, check out my weird hands.
Check out my weird hands. I feel like in my mind, Naruto is not the comic where people do this that much, but these guys are really going for it. Like maybe I will be wrong, and there's just a lot more of this in here. A lot more of like really in-depth technique explanations. It's like pretty heavy on it here. There is like an element which I think is like maybe kind of interesting and also kind of underdeveloped, where like, oh, these two sound ninja from like Orochimaru's village. There's this sort of element of like, Dosu's got like his like sound emitting gauntlet, and like Zaku's had somebody like fuck up his body so he can do his like air pressure hands. Mm-hmm. Like he's got like tubes in there, and there's like there's almost this element of like, oh, here's like Orochimaru's new ninja who like more than learning techniques in like the traditional way. They've just got like technology and shit, and that's a threat, which isn't like a thing that I don't feel like it's a thing that super comes up in like Naruto proper all that much. Mm-hmm. But you kind of see inklings of it here. Yeah, and that's like a thing that winds up being in Boruto a lot. Yeah, it is a bigger thing in Boruto. I have a question. What's that?
You know how like Dosu and Zaku each have like a weird thing that they got going on? Mm-hmm. Does Keen have one?
She's got bells.
Okay.
So like not really on the same level.
Okay, so like the girl version.
Yeah, she's got bells.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Don't worry, we didn't forget Keen.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we as like Ino is like watching this play out. She's remembering how she and Sakura used to be friends, and then they decided to stop being friends because they both liked Sasuke. I mean, I was as like a 8-year-old or however old they are in this flashback, I was not particularly romantically inclined. So maybe if a romantically inclined 8-year-old is a thing that exists, maybe this would be more relatable to them. But it just seems like this kind of alien thing to me of like, oh yeah, we can't be friends because we like the same boy. Like it just feels kind of like flat and artificial to me.
Yeah, it's like it's less than nothing to me.
And then there's also the element of like, oh, Sakura is like losing her closest friendship because of her like commitment to liking Sasuke, which is like the introduction of sort of an accidental theme in Naruto of the idea that liking Sasuke so much is bad for Sakura. Like it's not a thing that I don't think is really on the writers' minds, but it is a thing that is probably true pretty inarguably.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, so Sakura's trying to fight back against the Sound Trio, and it's just not going anywhere because she's just doing the thing where she throws like knives and they get deflected, right? Mm-hmm. And like shuriken get deflected because that's how that goes. And we have Kin step in, she grabs her hair, and this stuff is it's pretty fucking gross how like Keen just like steps in and is like, all right, it's time for the girl versus girl moment. She's gonna be like, you're such a fucking stupid girl for caring about your hair so much. Like it is sort of preemptively flattening what will be the like big turn for Sakura and Jabir being like, okay, I'm ready to like move on from these frivolous girl bullshit things.
It could have been something, Ruby.
It could have been something.
Are we ready to just like move on to the next segment and just talk about the episode as a whole?
Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay. Sakura grabs a kunai and cuts her hair, releasing her from Keen's grip, resolving herself to be stronger and take the lead. Keen stabs her in the back, but Sakura gets off a substitution jutsu, repositioning to attack Zaku, who reflects her volley of kunai back at her, only to hit a log with another substitution jutsu. Sakura drops in on Zaku from above, displaying the hand signs for another substitution jutsu. Zaku flings kunai at her, expecting a log, and quickly averts his gaze to find out where she'll pop up next, only to be surprised by bleeding Sakura dropping in on him. She lays into him, stabbing his arm and biting down on his other hand. She stays latched on while Zaku struggles on the ground to shake her off. Ino's taken aback, remembering her childhood with Sakura, and how they both grew out their hair to impress Sasuke. This brings Ino to tears, and is the push they need to get Team 10 in on the fight.
Right, so yeah, we get Sakura cutting off her hair, and like everything about this episode is like designed to make this like as frustrating as like a symbol for like Sakura's big turn as possible. Because again, like I was just saying, there's the stuff with Keen being like, this is just your stupid, frivolous girl nature that you're hanging on to. So it's like gender bullshit in that way, and then also we get the reveal that like, both Ino and Sakura have long hair because they heard Sasuke likes girls with long hair, which like somebody's lying to you. Sasuke doesn't like girls, first of all.
Yeah. Also, they heard that when they were like 8. So like,
yeah, and so like there's. Like Sakura cutting off her hair is like immediately denied of being like a symbol of fraction that means anything to her, and it's just like gender bullshit on multiple levels, and it's really frustrating. Like it's
so frustrating, and like the worst part about it is how there is like a kernel of something good in here, right? Like I really like the sequence of like tricking them with multiple substitution jutsus only to like take a hit. To like
it's like cool. It
take
is
advantage
like
of that. It's really cool.
It is like that is like it's like a really solid trick, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, you're taking into account like what we know of how this stuff works. And so she baits at the two big attacks with substitution, and she's like, okay, they're just gonna go for like a weak attack because they know I'm just gonna substitute, but I'm gonna like take these kunai to the arm and like drop down on him. And it's like, oh shit, maybe this is actually going somewhere. And it doesn't.
Yeah, and then it just fucking doesn't.
No, I mean then she like pins him to the ground and bites his arm, and then he punches her in the head for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, right, like, yeah, she gets her head punched for the rest of the episode, and then a bunch of new people come in to protect her, right? Like,
right. And it is farcical. It is just extended to the point of comedy. We have so many, like, shots of, like, the camera just kind of panning around this scene while, like, sad music plays, and also punch sound effects play.
It's like, and like, I think I get they're trying to go with, like, it is kind of like an intense, like, desperate thing to be like latched onto somebody, like, and take a beating, right? It's just like,
yeah.
I don't think the show conveys that with any weight at all.
No, because it's like, because first of all, it goes on for so long, and there's like it just keeps cutting back to it, and there's also the sense of like, okay, so she stopped Zaku from like moving to attack Sasuke, but like if Keen and Dosu wanted to do anything,
yeah,
like it's basically just the fact that they're content to sit there while Zaku punches her in the head. That
right, you know what this should have been? This should have been Sakura and Zaku like struggling on the ground with Sakura fucking strangling him, and the other two sound ninjas just being like, holy shit,
oh shit. Yeah, right, like, maybe one of them is punching her in the head while she's crying, I don't know.
Yeah, right, like, she's latched on, and the other two are trying to get her off of him, right? Like,
she's like, oh shit, she's actually, like, trying to kill him. Oh god, we were talking a big game, but, like...
God, it could have been fucking anything else. Right? And imagine if these last 2 episodes were about Sakura, like, actually fighting fucking tooth and nail through the woods.
Yeah.
Like, fleeing the Sound Ninja and setting up traps and, like, actually being fucking Rambo, right? Like, just going all fucking out, like, getting fucking bloody and sweaty and muddy and just, like, actually doing fucking anything good.
Right. Like, if it was a thing where, like, when people needed to, like, step in to protect her, it was like, oh, she's at her limit now. Like, she's actually, like... And I mean, I guess we're meant to believe that she's at her limit now, but that just means that her limit is, like... I mean, you know, I guess we're just... We're all gonna take Kakashi at his word, and Sakura's potential just isn't that high. And it's like... it's because this is like, I mean, this is like the episode where like she's like saying the title. This is like in theory, this is the Sakura episode. This is like the big moment for her, and it just amounts to so little. Like it is the gesture of cutting off her hair, which is like rendered so like, and it is the like one cool trick that just kind of like loses all weight by how much of the episode just has her like lying on the ground crying after that.
It's just weak. It's just weak and just incredibly disappointing that they just didn't do fucking anything with it.
Naruto is a show that can do a thing where, like, oh, a character who's, like, at a disadvantage, who's kind of the underdog in a situation, can, like, turn it around. Because that's kind of, I mean, that's what the show is built on. That's, to some extent, what shonen action manga is built on. And, like, Naruto is good at these things sometimes. It just doesn't care to invest in, like, Sakura to the extent where she can really play a part in there. She's just like the briefest interval of like the revolving door of characters like charging into this scene after episodes of build up to this moment.
I don't want to end this podcast without having said anything positive.
We said a lot positive at the start of this episode.
About this episode, about this segment. I will say, I think it's a nice touch that in every different like scene in Ino's flashback, the girls are wearing different outfits.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's stuff in Ino's flashback that's like, oh, it is cute to see them like start to be friends with each other, right? Like it is, like I do believe that they were friends at one point. I do really buy that, like, oh yeah, you know, they had like a connection. I just like
totally.
I just find the way that goes so unsatisfying because like girls just falling into the gravity well of like being near Sasuke and deciding that like Sasuke isn't interesting because. Like, there's nothing there for them.
There's nothing there for them. Girls, Sasuke doesn't like girls.
Like, like, at the end of Naruto, Sasuke's going to marry Sakura and see her, like, maybe 2 days a year. I don't know what more to say. That is just kind of a bummer.
It's just disappointing.
For sure. No, like, I said this earlier. I was like, they had really had me going for a moment because... Yeah. Like it's playing the music to like build up to like a tense cool moment and like Sakura's doing her shit and it's playing the cool music and like she does the cool trick and I feel like we're just kind of like circling around this and repeating it, but like, man.
Yeah, right. Like when she was doing the trick, when I saw her like take the hit and start to fall and like the blood drip on fucking Zaku's face from above, right? Like,
yeah, that's like a pretty cool shot, right? Like, because you get. Like, you know, you see Zaku from above, and like he like immediately looks away from Sakura, and he's like looking around trying to see where she like is going to be next as she like is like the camera zooms in, and like you realize like, oh shit, Sakura's still above him. It's like, and it's like probably like the most character shot of the episode, and like, you know, there is enough to like while this is happening, there is enough to make it feel cool.
Yeah. And then she fucking makes contact with Zaku, and it just like, oh, okay, all right, okay, yeah. For a minute there, I thought like we were all wrong, and that Sakura was actually a character.
I mean, I didn't think we were gonna be wrong.
No,
but I did think like maybe there's a few things I didn't remember. Like that would be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice if there were like, you know, some threads that we didn't realize weren't pulled, right? Like. If there was like some lost substance that we just like, you know, kind of glanced over in the past and just like didn't take note of. No.
It's like honestly kind of impressive how like there might be less than I expected in a lot of ways.
It took a lot of work to make this fall as flat as it did.
Do you have anything more you want to say about this episode? Because I'm like I am kind of feeling like I have said my piece on this, and I could keep going. Yeah, I don't know how much of a good podcast that is because that is just us saying like, damn, Sakura doesn't get to do anything in this show, and like,
yeah, I mean, like I could keep saying that for hours, but I mean, you know,
in theory, like that would be a pretty bad podcast to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm like
because we all know it.
I'm sure everybody listening fucking gets it.
Yeah, I mean, like the choir's gotta get tired of getting preached to sometime. So let's maybe wrap it up.
What are we watching next week?
Next week, we are watching episodes 33, 34, and 35 of Naruto.
All right. If you want to support the show, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Konoha Crush, all one word. Get access to early episodes, special like bonus podcasts. And if you pay me a lot of money, that's $100, I will draw your Naruto OC. So, keep that in mind. Any images we talk about in the podcast will be on our Twitter, at Konoha Crush, all one word. And you know what? Thanks for sticking with us. 10 episodes. It's like kind of a big deal. We're like a real podcast now.
We're really a real podcast now. And all of these episodes matter.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're on Spotify and shit now. It's great. So, look for us. Look for us wherever you're like listening to podcasts, and like we might be there, like for real. So later, remember, there's no such thing as filler.